Good afternoon. This is Damon Fordham with the Preservation Society of Charleston's Oral History Project. Today is July the 10th, 2022, and I am with Miss Jamella Brown Jaglal here. And can you please give us your address?
My name is Jamella Brown Jaglal. My address is 31 Charing Cross Road, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407.
Okay. And can you tell us when and where you were born?
I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, January 21st, 1960.
Okay. What family business do you represent for this oral history interview?
For this oral history interview, I am representing the dental practice of Dr. James Brown.
Very good. Now, so let's talk about your upbringing in Charleston. Can you describe the neighborhood and house which you grew up in?
I had a wonderful childhood. I grew up actually in the North Charleston Heights area of Charleston. And we had a very nice home, and the property in which we lived on was property, a large piece of property that was owned by my grandmother specifically. And so that property was divided into three 1.5 acre parcels each. And so my two aunts lived next door to us, to our home. And so I just grew up in a nice area. There was no one there at that time but our family. So it was our home and my two aunts' home. So I grew up going from my home to one aunt's house to the next aunt's house. So, it was like that. So that's how it grew.
Okay, was this a paternal or a maternal grandmother?
My paternal.
Okay, very good. So where did you go to school?
As you know, in Charleston at that time, I first started my preschool and kindergarten education at Calvary Episcopal Church School.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I started my education. And then I transitioned to Immaculate Conception, or ICS as it is commonly known. At that time, when I transitioned to Immaculate Conception, it was not a high school anymore, but grades first through eighth grade. And then after Immaculate Conception, I graduated high school at Bishop England High School when it was on Calhoun Street in downtown Charleston, which is now part of which is now the College of Charleston Library.
Okay, so you primarily went through the parochial school system in Charleston. Back when, did you say Calvary or Cathedral?
Calvary.
Okay, because I remember there was a black church school called Cathedral around that same time period.
Right, so I graduated from Immaculate Conception.
Right.
Well, see, I think they combined Cathedral, which was on Broad Street, with Immaculate Conception.
Oh, I
Right.
see.
Right. So that's how that happened.
Right, and Immaculate Conception, that was the black parochial high school until about 1969 or so, right?
Right, but when I attended, it was just grades first grade.
Right, and so by that time, the children in the parochial system went to Bishop England High School, which is now on Daniel Island.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So can you tell me a little bit about, by the way, what about college?
Oh, I'm a graduate of Howard University in Washington, D.C.
Bison.
Yes, I'm a Bison.
Historical Black University.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences at these schools?
Well, I chose to go to Howard University because I had never had that. I had always gone to integrated schools, so I had never had that quote unquote Black experience. And so, because even when I graduated from Bishop England, there may have been 13 African Americans in my graduating class. So I chose to go to Richmond School. And I chose Howard University because I used to visit Washington, D.C. quite a bit because my father had graduated professional school at Howard University. So I was very familiar with the campus, city, and I liked the cultural diversity that is at Howard. people say that Howard is an HBCU, but on the Howard campus, you meet people from every country on the earth. So it's one of the uh, most interesting places, I would say, most interesting places to go to college.
Right. For those that don't know, it's a historically Black college and university, and that's where you met your husband, am I correct?
Yes, yes. And Howard has always been open to all groups of people because even in my father's graduating class of 1952, when he graduated dental school, there were quite a few Jewish people as well as Italians in his class because, as you know, historically in the United States, Jews and Italians were not all the time allowed to go to PWI institutions. So on the Howard campus, you've always had a Jewish presence, always a strong Indian presence, Arab presence. So it's always been a very unique experience there.
Okay, PWI is meaning predominantly white institution, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, because I didn't know there's a Jewish, that the long Jewish history there. So can you tell us a little bit more about your experiences growing up in Charleston?
I was very happy growing up here. I found that the African American community was very, at that time, very united. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone really supported each other. And so I had a very happy childhood. I knew almost everybody. I was expressing to someone a few weeks ago that now when I drive down Rutledge Avenue or Ashley Avenue or Spring Street, I didn't know anyone that lived in those homes. And when I was growing up, I could say, oh, that's my friend such and such's home, or this is my other friend's home, or that's my mom's or my parents' friend's house. And so it's just interesting now that I can't do that anymore.
So tell us a bit about your family's background and your parents and where they grew up.
Well, my mother is from Charleston. My father was born in Holly Hill, South Carolina, and his family moved to Charleston when he was 3 years old.
And what's your mother's name?
My mother's name is Sarah Burgess Brown, and her parents were the Reverend Fred Burgess and Mrs. Mary Grant Burgess.
All right. So how'd your father get his start as a dentist and business owner in Charleston?
Well, I would say that beginning started in childhood. He always told me stories of how he had to walk to a certain point to catch the bus to come downtown to go to school. And while they're walking to go to the bus, people would, call them inappropriate words out of the school bus windows. And he said at that time, he decided that he was going to be a doctor because he was going to be a self-employed person and not have to work for the people that were able to give African Americans jobs at that time. So I think because they didn't have a high school in North Charleston for African Americans to go to. I mean, Bonds Wilson was the first Black high school in North Charleston, and that came, I would say, in the 60s or something.
1946.
Right, yeah, 1946. But, by that time, my father was, on his way in college or whatever. But still, he started his education in a one-room schoolhouse in North Charleston, and because his mother was an English teacher. So she was the teacher, the principal, and, they may have had a few other teachers there, but my paternal grandmother was an educator, and she taught in a one-room schoolhouse in North Charleston, and she taught many people that are very successful here in Charleston now. And so that's how he started his education. And then for high school, he graduated from, it was called Avery Normal Institute. And now it is part of the College of Charleston and the Avery Research Center. But that is where he graduated high school.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so that was primarily the private black high school
Yeah.
for many years.
So my father and his two sisters graduated from Avery, and his sisters became educators, and then he went on.
Very good. That's interesting. So he went to college where?
He went to South Carolina State, and where he was a chemistry math major, double major. And then while he was at South Carolina State, he got drafted. And so he got drafted into World War II. And he said, what was interesting, he said once he got into the military, people would say, oh, you've been to college, we'll make you an officer. And he would always say, no, I'm going back home and I'm going to be a doctor. And so he never let the financial opportunity or even the opportunity to remain in Europe and live there and be free, as some GIs did at that time. He never let that sway him not to come back home. Because just to digress a bit, when he was at Avery in high school, every day after high school, he would go to Coburg Dairy and load milk trucks. And he said every time he's back with her, he would say, that's okay, Brown, you're going to be a doctor. And so it's so profound to me, because if you tell a young person now to work hard so they could go from point A to point B, they'll say, I'm not going to do that. And so he said when he graduated from high school, the person that was running the dairy at the time said, oh, you're more educated than the rest of these Negroes. I want to offer you a full-time job. And so he said nothing made him feel prouder than to say to him, thank you, sir, but no thank you. I'm going to college. And he wanted to say, and I want to be more educated than you are. So I think all of those things, along with his family background, pushed him forward. But he also said he wanted to be a health professional because he wanted, Black people to be able to walk through the front door of his office with dignity. He always said that. So he said, no more back doors. We're going to be able to walk through the front door, sit down, get served, and be appreciated.
And what?
Yes. And so then he came back to South Carolina State, graduated, and himself and two of his friends that had gotten drafted from South Carolina State, they all three ended up at Howard, and two became dentists and one became a physician.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So how did he select the Morris Street location?
Well, when he first graduated from Howard Dental School in 1952, he originally practiced with Dr. J.T. Massey, who was on King Street. And so that was sort of like his mentor, and he worked with him for a couple of years. And so then after that, he got his own office also on King Street, but it was above Abraham Menswear. And so then in the late 60s, he bought the place on Morris Street, and then he was there. And also while he was on Morris Street, he would still go to Holly Hill one day a week and practice up there in Holly Hill, because he said that's where he was born, and at that time they needed a dentist there. So he did that, for a while until his practice here was so much so he couldn't really, go there.
But now, how would you describe the Morris Street area at the time that your father's business was operating?
Oh, at that time, the Morris Street corridor was vibrant. It was exciting. Everyone knew everyone. If you needed anything, you could go from, one place to the next place. You had, at that time, you had Dr. Jones, you had Dr. Kane, you had Dr. Purvis's, drugstore and pharmacy. You had the Brooks Motel. So it was just this exciting area. You had Judge Martin and his law practice. So sometimes, and all of these people were my father's friends. And so sometimes if he had a break, he'd say, well, I'm going to walk down the street and go see Albert, which was Mr. Brooks. And he would walk down the street and would say, well, I'm going to see Danny, which was, Judge Martin. So it was this area, and he'd go down and see Dr. Purvis, so walk around and see Dr. Jones. So it was a very supportive area. Then next to his office was Gertie's Soul Food Restaurant. And so across the street, Morris Street Baptist Church. So it was a very alive community. So during that time, it was just vibrant, and everybody spoke to each other, and people. I don't know. It's just very different today.
Can you describe the clientele of his practice?
Well, at that time, I would say he primarily served the African American community. The people would come from Wadmalaw, Edstone, Johns Island, Dark Charleston. People would come. It wasn't just the downtown community. It was the community, the Charleston community.
Now, there's a story you told me, I think that's important to repeat here, about a boy who had a serious deformed teeth, and your father became an influence on him.
Oh, yes. This young man came into his office with his mom because his teeth were, if there's such a thing as more than protruding. And the little boy was being bullied at school, and none of the white orthodontists in Charleston would take him. My father was a general dentist, but my father said, okay, I have knowledge of this, which you do learn in dental school, but he was not an orthodontist specifically. But he told the lady, come in, I'm going to help you. And so he called the orthodontics department at Howard University. He took models of this young man's mouth, and he put the braces on. And he said when he took the braces off, he said he was so proud of himself because, he said that little boy's mouth was beautiful. And so the lady said to him, how much do I owe you, Doc? And he told her nothing. It was a pleasure to do it. And he didn't charge her. But many years later, they came back to visit him, and the young man was now an attorney. He was now a judge in another city. And they both said, and she said, Dr. Brown, you changed my son's life. Because at that time, he didn't want to go to school because he was being bullied. But you changed his life. And now look at him, he's a judge. And I just brought him by here to show you that he's a judge, he's an attorney, he went to law school, and now he's been appointed a judge, and you changed his life. And I don't think he would be a judge today if it wasn't for what you did.
Right. I think that story is important to include here from our previous conversation.
But many times, when I was growing up, sometimes people from the country, from the islands, they would say, Doc, I don't have any money, but I brought you a bushel of shrimp. I caught the fresh this morning. And he would not embarrass them and not help them. He would just say, well, I have a family and things like that, but he would always serve them, and they would appreciate it that he didn't embarrass them by not serving them or saying, "Oh no, you have to pay my money" or something like that. But he would accept whatever they had, and what was so, I think, the way that he treated people always made people want to do right by him. So it may not be that same week, but the next week they would come and they would pay him. And I think, because he always told me, I walk all of my patients to the front door and tell them thank you because they don't understand. And so he always, said you have to treat everyone with respect.
Indeed. So could you tell me some of the key players involved with your father's business, such as the business partners, staff, etc.?
He always practiced by himself. In later years, my husband is a dentist, so my husband practiced with him until he retired at that location, and then my husband.
Okay, because I remember a nurse there when I was born.
Well, yeah. So there was a hygienist there, and then there was another nurse there, Miss Mack, and then
Yes.
Miss Mack, and then there was the hygienist, Miss Palicu, Irene.
Okay.
Mhm.
Very good. Now, can you tell us a little bit more about his impact on the community?
I think he was very involved in the Charleston community. He was one in which he was very proud of. He was a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. But in addition, he was a member of the Rotary. He was a member of the Charleston Chamber of Commerce. He was on the board of the Bank of South Carolina. He was a member of the Business and Professionals Association. So he was always very involved and super involved in his church. So he was brought up in St. Paul AME Church in North Charleston, but he was a member of Emmanuel AME Church.
Okay, he was also in Sigma Pi Phi, the Boule.
Yes, he was a member of the Boule. And growing up, we were in Jacksonville and those organizations here in the city. But he loved his fraternity. He loved the Rotary. He never missed a meeting, and he never missed his chamber meetings. And he, was instrumental in bringing other, African Americans into the Rotary and the chamber. And professionally, he was a member of the Charleston Dental Society, South Carolina Dental Society. And he was also, I don't know if many people may not know this, but there is an African American group, local group of physicians, dentists, and pharmacists. And then on the state level, that is called the Palmetto Medical Dental Pharmaceutical Association, which was founded in 1896, because even though they would say, well, the African American professionals could join the white groups, they did not allow them to join the white groups, and they were still fighting the health disparities that plague the African American community, which still plague the African American community sometimes today. So, and that group is still in existence today.
Okay.
He was president, a member, and also became president of that group.
Well, do you have a favorite memory of visiting your father's business?
Oh yes, because when I was at Calvary, he would have Big John Chisholm, and I mean most Black people in Charleston knew Big John, Mr. Chisholm, and so he would drop me to my dad's office, and then when I was at Immaculate Conception, I would walk to his office. So I would leave Immaculate Conception, drop off at Dr. Purvis's pharmacy to get an ice cream, and then I'd get to my dad's office. And Gertie was right next door. She would normally be in the door and say, "Hi, how was school?" And we would get to the office, and then I would sit there and do my homework and things like that until we got ready to go to our home.
Okay, I mean, so it's a very real possibility that you might have been there when I was waiting for your father to treat me back in those days. But now you might want to explain Big John Chisholm to those who don't know.
Well, Mr. Chisholm was very involved in the Charleston community, but he also had a business where he would pick children up and drop them to their homes, or drop them, like he did myself and my cousin. He would drop us to my dad's office. But he was, everyone knew him.
Very good. So how long did the office operate on Morris Street?
It operated on Morris Street until my father retired in the 1990s. Yes.
So he never practiced anywhere else after that?
No.
Okay. So how would you describe the changes on Morris Street over time?
Well, first, I would say the first thing that happened is Dr. Haynes passed away. And so then that was the first home or office or building to be, I would say, bought by a white person. Then Dr. Purvis closed, and it just started gradually. Dr. Jones died first, I think. Then Dr. Haynes. Then Dr. Purvis passed away, and so since Dr. Purvis passed away, that has never been a pharmacy again. It's always been, a commercial outlet.
Right. And then Brooks Motel closed.
Right. Then the Brooks Motel closed after that. And it's just, even though I was a child, I remember all of the Black organizations, fraternities, people would have meetings there at the Brooks Motel. I remember I was a little girl, but I remember Martin Luther King coming and the nurses' strike and all those things that happened in the Morris Street corridor was just on fire and involved, and people coming to that area because Martin Luther King would be staying at that hotel. He spoke at Mother Emanuel.
That's right.
And he would meet at the Brooks Motel, and all of the community leaders or even just professional people in the community would be right there along with him to strategize on how to help, everyone else.
Speaking of Dr. King, do you remember anything particular about seeing him?
Well, I was a little girl, but I was so excited because this was someone I used to see on television. And in my home, my father always made it a point to teach me African American history. And so even if it was just at the breakfast table or at the dinner table or while we were driving to school in the car, he would teach me those things and most importantly, buy me books. And so, and we would talk about it. But our times in the car were always really special because it was always a teaching moment. Like one day I was at work and I was humming a song, and so this lady said, "How do you know that song? That song is so old." I said, "Well, when I would go to school, my dad said, we'll listen to my music when we go to school, and we'll listen to your music when we come from school." And so I have knowledge of a lot of older music as well, my music of my genre. But he always used our time together as a teaching moment. And even when we were at home, and even though he was busy and he was a doctor, I would say he was a 100% parent. Because I do work in academia, I would just wish that young people would understand the importance of knowing their history and not disregarding their history. Because I meet students and they'll say, well, it's a different time. And I was like, no, it's not a different time. It's not a different situation. It's just a different year. The situations still occur, but this may not be in your, in your face, blatantly in your face. So I get disturbed that parents don't teach their children African American. It is sad to me because Morris Street is gentrified, and sometimes it's not neighborly on Morris Street anymore.
Okay.
I still own that office on Morris Street. So and I have put that in my will, and I've also told my daughter that it can never be sold.
Same was true of my dad's house.
Right.
So how would you feel your father would want his legacy to be remembered?
My father always said that if you live on this earth and you never helped another person, and especially a person that looks like you have lived in vain. Your life was not worth anything. And he would always teach me things like that. And so many times in Charleston, because he was the way that he was and because of the way that he treated people, I think I have benefited from that kindness and the respect that he showed people. Because one day, and I may have shared this with you, I was going to buy a basket from one of the basket makers, and she said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Oh," she said, "Are you a tourist?" And I said, "No, I'm from Charleston." And then she asked me, she said, "Who is your people?" And so I said, "Oh, yeah, my name is Jamella Jaglal." And she said, "That's a strange name." And so I explained to her that, oh, my husband is Indian, and that's how I got that name. My maiden name is Brown. And so, but to make a long story short, after we got through all those pleasantries, and then I finally told her who my parents were, she said, "Oh, baby, you don't have to pay for this back." She said, "I will never forget it. One day I didn't have any money and I was in pain, and he saw me, and he didn't make me feel shame because I didn't have any money. And I told him I didn't have any money. And he said, just bring it back when you have it." He said he was so kind to me and he didn't make me feel ashamed. And that has happened to me on more than one occasion. With a basket maker, and one time with another elder lady who was working in a parking garage. It just happened to me. And they'll say, "Oh no, you was so kind to me and my family." So how you treat people will determine your legacy. And at the time of my father's death, it showed because Emmanuel AME Church holds 1,500 people, and I will tell you, 1,500 people were at that funeral. I didn't know the people that were there, and so and I tried to teach my daughter, and I think I treat my students that way. In my office, I try to do my best for them and help them, even though maybe sometimes I may go beyond the advisor-student relationship in getting them to move forward, or teaching them how to move forward, because everyone did not have the upbringing or the opportunity that I had. But I'll share this story. I had one student who was from Back to Green, and now he is in Washington, D.C., and he is the director of counseling at an all-boys school. And when we first met, he said, I don't think when I first met you, I didn't think I would like you. You seem like a Huxtable or something like that. I said, but my father was a doctor. And so I would just talk to him all the time. And then he loosened up a little bit and he would come by all the time. And then I got him a job as my work study. And so then we would spend a lot of time together. And then I said, you need a ride home? And he would say, why? He would fuss at me the entire time or tell me, what things I could be doing or how to do things. But then he left he left Trident Tech and went to the College of Charleston. And I said, live on campus, don't live at home. Pledge fraternity. He did all of those things. And a whole new world opened up for him. He had never left Charleston, but he joined the fraternity and started traveling a little bit and then went to New York University and got his master's. But through all of those steps, he never made a step without calling me. Even when he was at the College of Charleston, even when he was at New York University, he would always call me that he had huge decisions to make. And so I went to New York one time and we had lunch. And my husband was with me. I didn't know he used to listen to me, but he told my husband, he said, Doc, if it wasn't for your wife, I wouldn't be where I am today. And he's never told me that. He told my husband that. So I think, I'm proud to be my father's daughter, but, I'm just thankful for all of the wisdom that he gave me and how he taught me how to teach people. And because, that I think that's the greatest gift he did. He practiced what he preached, and he was very faithful to God. And very faithful. And every morning as a child, he would always get on his knees and do his prayers in the morning and in the evening until he got ill and he couldn't do it. He never changed his profession or his success, never changed who he was. And changed his heart. And he loved his wife. And he always said, I'm not successful because I received all of this education. He said, that's part of it. But he said, I'm also successful because I had. Well, when he was getting ready to go to Howard because he could not go to the Medical University of South Carolina, they didn't accept African Americans at that time, he said, when I got on the train to go to Howard, he said, I had 1 suit, 3 sport coats, 8 shirts, so I have a spare shirt and some extra pair of pants, a few pair of shoes, and the grace of God. And he said, when he got on the train, he said to himself, thank you, Jesus. I'm not going to let you down. And I appreciate the opportunity, that you've blessed me with. But he said, I'm not going to let my parents down. And I thought this was important because he said, I'm not going to let my community down. He said, because they're looking up to me. And so, and even when my parents got married, he told my mother, because, a lot of people in the wedding were his South Carolina State classmates and his frat brothers or people he met in dental school at Howard University. But he told my mother, well, I have to have somebody from the community in the wedding. And so she agreed. But, he never forgot, the people that maybe they didn't achieve the things that he did, but they were still played important roles in his life. So he never forgot people.
Okay, well, I thought it was, we had this conversation earlier that it was important that a story like that be preserved for the record.
Right.
So I think that about covers it. This is Damon Fordham with the Charleston Preservation Society's Oral History Project on July 10th, 2022 with Miss Jamella Brown Jaglal. Thank you, and it's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Same thing.